Heil Hitler! Two words spoken that praised the works of an evil tyrant. But what influenced him to feel the hatred he felt? And what did his officials do to justify their crimes? Finally, what did other countries do to help the victims? Stay tuned to find out more.
Today on 60 Minutes, we have Professor Alex Cho from Stanford University to discuss the topic, what did Hitler's subordinates do to justify their crimes? Mr. Cho will go in depth on this topic. Hello, Mr. Cho. Now, explain, how did they justify their crimes, killing of millions of people, for no apparent reason?
Their justification, that they used the most, was called the Nuremberg defense, after the trials, which were taking place in Nuremberg. It basically justifies their actions as it was what their superiors ordered.
Okay. So, Hitler would be more to blame, is what they were saying? That they were just following his lead so that they were completely innocent? Is that what they were saying?
They were basically saying that it was the intents of Hitler and his generals, and that they were nothing more than just tools for their actions.
I see. Did many of them get punished?
Most were found guilty. Several were acquitted, but...
Oh. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Cho, what were the main crimes committed by the Nazis against these groups of people?
The first two of the first trials within Nuremberg were known as the Dossler case and the Doctor's Trial. First, the Dossler case was a trial against Anton Dossler, who was a general in the German infantry. He was accused of murdering 15 American prisoners of war. His plea was that he was following the orders of Hitler, implementing his commando order, in which commandos and saboteurs would be executed without trial. His plea was found... He was found guilty and was executed by shooting because he blatantly violated the Geneva Convention of 1929 earlier, which specifically stated that prisoners of war cannot be executed.
Doctor's case. How did that go down?
The Doctor's case was a case in which 24 Nazi officials, 20 of whom were physicians, were tried for implementing Action T4, which was the Nazi euthanasia program, in which they killed the mentally retarded, the elderly, and several other people who they deemed as unworthy of life.
Wow, is this mostly in the concentration camps or outside the concentration camps as well? Or kind of both?
This was both, as they were indicted of conspiracy to commit war crimes and crimes against humanity. Crimes that included, but are not limited to, performing medical operations on unwilling prisoners and civilians of unoccupied countries, and the mass murder of those stigmatized as the aged, insane, incurably ill, deformed, and so on, by gas, lethal injection, and several other very brutal means of killing. Crimes against humanity in which they did the same crimes as listed earlier on German nationals. And finally, membership of a criminal organization known as the SS. This 60 Minutes was brought to you by Top Print. If you love America, then you love Top Print.
What did other countries do to help the Jews?
One of the main problems of the Holocaust is that there weren't actually a lot of countries that did help. But before and after, there was a bunch of help. For example, Spain, between 1939 and 1941, let a bunch of Jews go through their country and onto their way to Portugal, but most of them ended up staying. But during the Holocaust, a lot of countries closed off their borders, such as the United States, Spain, France, a bunch of European countries, closed off their borders, so Jews couldn't really, escape. And the Nazis limited immigration, so during the Holocaust, or even right before the war, it was very hard to get out of there, so...
So were there any countries that specifically helped the Nazis to murder the Jews?
Yeah, Austria supported the Nazi Party and like their whole Holocaust with what the Nazis wanted. Like France didn't. Italy fought with the Nazis, but they actually helped shelter a few Jews, while actually their dictator was not the nicest to Jews. So they were kind of half and half. Some of them helped Jews from Nazis, but they fought along with the Germans to win World War II.
So, to specify and clarify, what specific countries helped the Jews and how did they help them besides Spain?
Italy helped like shelter Jews from German occupation because they felt that it was the right thing to do. The United States didn't really allow anyone in, so I think that was fault on our country, but just not really a lot of help. But what was really good, probably the most known story, is of Denmark, when they rescued almost 1,000 Jews from Nazis. What they did was they put them on boats and sent them to Sweden, which was a neutral country, and they saved that like at least 1,000 Jews, and they didn't have to. Some of them got killed in the process, and they particularly didn't like the Nazis. They felt it was the right thing to do, so they helped these Jews, and Denmark had one of the highest survival rates of any European country. Yeah, they really worked to help save the Jews, so it was really good. But a lot of other countries either weren't strong enough to fight, or they didn't want to. They were just kind of guilty bystanders. They just kind of watched it. And what's like a common saying is that there were these white houses right next to concentration camps. Just these white houses with people living in them, and they're seeing the horrors that are going on, but they just choose to ignore it, even though they live right next to a place where millions of people are getting killed.
Now, to ask a personal question, what would you do if you were in the situation of being able to either help or not help the Jewish population?
I would help, probably. I think it's the right thing to do, but I think a lot of people didn't really feel the need to, and I think that now, as our civilization has progressed, that people are more willing to help others and to fight against cruelty and dictators and people who might not necessarily be of their race or their religion, but they're still willing to help. But I would definitely help, and I think a lot of people would, but back then I think things were a lot different.
I see. All right, thank you, Mr. Meir.
You're welcome.
Only you can stop this cruel treatment to these dots. Only you can donate. Only you can change the world from these reckless youth. No dots were harmed in the making of this film.
So today we have Reese Swanson here to talk about Hitler's early life and what brought him to his views. Hello, Reese.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Alright, Reese. First things first. Who were his parents?
His father, who I'm going to specify on today, was a civil servant who went by the name Alois. He was very strict, and he raised Hitler in a very brutal and harsh way.
What happened in his early life that caused him to hate the Jews so much?
Now, to follow on and clarify more on Alois's harsh upbringing, in a previous marriage, Alois had a son who turned out to be a very troublesome youth, who was put in jail for theft. Now, since Alois didn't want young Adolf to end up like that, he brought him up in a very harsh way, so constant beatings for the young child. Now, after Alois died, his mother became very sick with breast cancer. She was going to a doctor, who Hitler presumed to be a Jewish doctor, and when she died, Hitler immediately blamed it on the Jewish doctor, which stirred up hate inside himself. Also, when he was on the streets, alone and struggling to survive, He tried to get into the Vienna Art School, where he was turned down by a professor who he presumed to be Jewish, which, once again, stirred up another feeling of anti-Semitism in young Hitler's body. Hitler was also in the army after he tried to enlist in the Russian army, where he was shut down because he was too weak and very thin. So he crossed the border to the German army. Now, at the time, they were in a small scuffle with a, so you can say, local militia. Hitler was temporarily blinded in a gas attack where he was sent into the hospital. Now, this little war, eventually, it ended disastrously for Hitler. His beloved army had surrendered to an army who he thought was the Jews. Now, he immediately said and this was actually displayed in his book, Mein Kampf, he said, "It seems as if the Jews have stabbed us in the back." This, as the other events, would be known and expected to cause the anti-Semitism that he felt that changed the world as we know.
Thank you for your time here, Reese.
Thank you.
That's it for today on 60 Minutes.